everybody, and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion from the garage. Peter Clayton's behind the camera. Now, you're either watching this on Facebook, which we post on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, or maybe you're listening to it as a podcast. Thanks to Andy Martin, who sends it off to all of these places who do your favourite podcasts, and probably even some of your not-so-favourite podcasts. I was wandering around the garage a few minutes ago and I saw this and I thought I'd show it to you. This is the kind of microphone that was in use when I first came to Adelaide in 1976. You imagine, microphones have gone from stuff like this to stuff like this. Truly amazing. And I don't know how I came by that. I'm sure I didn't steal it. Well, I hope I didn't steal it.
Well, you might have owned the station.
Oh, well, that's true. I did, didn't I?
I think you're quite just.
Yeah. And I've got a time capsule over there that I must unpack and go through with you, because it's got some fantastic memories of 100 years of broadcasting 5DN, or 5DON-N as it started out in life. What else? It's a Wednesday. Something we might do or start doing on Friday is doing a word of the day, because I found a good one. Pete, don't look so worried. It's a good one. Herkle Durkle. Now, you're a Scot, aren't you?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, Scottish bloke. Yeah. Does that ring any bells with you? Oh. Herkle Durkle. It is a 200-year-old Scottish term meaning to lounge in bed long after it is time to get up, which is one of the great joys of life, of course. Happiness is Herkle Durkling. Let us Herkle Durkle for the rest of our lives. Be good. I suppose it's one of the advantages of being sort of retired. Although I don't like to think of myself as retired. No, keep going.
No, you're transitioning.
Transitioning, yes. Waiting for the big break. Channel 7 has, speaking of the big break, Channel 7 has announced some interesting changes to their 6 o'clock news. Now, I had to read about this twice because I didn't quite know what to think. Channel 7 will feature an astrological segment, and also on Friday a comedy sketch. They're going to put these two elements in the news. I don't know what's going on there. I do wonder, though. Look, it could be very clever. It could be clever. You know, if you buy a newspaper, for example, in there you'll find all sorts of things. You'll find probably an astrology column. You'll find crosswords. You'll find heavy news, human interest stuff, all kinds of things, and most importantly, I think, opinion pieces. Television news has never been big on opinion pieces. I remember Channel 7 did hire me, and going back, I think we called it Enough is Enough. I didn't call it the Court of Public Opinion, because that's what the radio show is called. I think we called it Enough is Enough. And it was a daily comment on the news. And I don't know why that finished. Anyway, I'm sidetracking myself. What I'd like to do is to get, perhaps we could get the news director, Mark Mooney, on the show on Friday, maybe? But maybe he wouldn't want to talk about it. I don't know. I don't know how free people are to talk about what they're doing in terms of, their corporate masters. I don't know how it works. All my people, when I was owning media, everyone was entitled to do what he liked or she liked. Here's a question. Should ANZAC Day be a totally closed holiday? It's what they want to do in New South Wales. Should that be right across the country to show respect for ANZAC Day? You can tell me what you think on Friday on the phone. I'll give you the number. It's 0491 65 68 60. But if you tune into jeremycordeaux.com, I'll remind you of that number frequently anyway. The CWA is 100 years old and will be, shock horror, accepting men. The Country Women's Association will be accepting men. Now, I don't know what they do these days. I was a guest at one of their conferences some years ago. I know they've got this wonderful old mansion on De Quetzeville Terrace. Don't know if they still have it. Beautiful, beautiful building. I do know that they make more than scones, but now men can join. What do you think? Good move? I think so, probably.
The odds might be in my favour.
Yes. The odds might be in your favour. You're looking for a bride.
Yeah.
Who can cook.
Yeah.
Oh dear, aren't we all? That'll get back. John Setka. Oh God, let's talk about John Setka. CFMEU. John's been there for 40 years. I think the boss for 12. He's quit. Suddenly. Effective immediately. Wow. One can only imagine what's behind this. But apropos absolutely nothing, as you would know, The Age and 60 Minutes have done an expose on the CFMEU. I think it needs a royal commission. Anyway, the allegation is that the organised crime figures, I'm going to tread carefully here because I suppose it's a defamatory minefield, but the allegation is that organised crime figures and bikie gang members, notorious bosses of outlaw bikie gangs, have been employed by the union to fill key positions on major construction sites around the country, particularly Victoria. But there is some concern about New South Wales as well. Remember, this union, this is the union that pressured the Labor government when it got into power to get rid of the ABCC. This is the Australian Building and Construction Commission, the cop on the beat. The union, or the unions, not just the CFMEU, but the unions own the Labor Party. So it'll be very interesting to see just what this government intends to do about this appalling situation. The building and construction industry has always been a bit of a problem. Bob Hawke, finally, was forced to deregister the previous union, which was the old BLF, after shocking examples of corruption, extortion, thuggery and standover tactics, blackmail. But it did go on for years before they stopped it, only to allow the same thing to happen all over again. The CFMEU, to me, is a lot more scary than the BLF and the legendary Norm Gallagher. You might remember him. I think he ultimately went to jail. Peter Malinauskas has said, Premier of South Australia, that he will act quickly if he finds any criminal activity in South Australia. And that's good. But I have to say that the union has become a lot more militant since he was elected. And it's not a good look that I am told that the Premier accepted a 6-figure donation from the CFMEU in the lead up to the last election. Now, if that's not right, I'm very happy to correct it. But that last election he obviously won. Political donations from trade unions are vital to the Labour Party, clearly. The union, or I suppose all of them, assume that their members are Labour supporters. Well, they behave like it. They are, of course, not all Labour supporters, but you pay your dues, and I don't think you've got any control over where the money goes. The CFMEU has to be deregistered. I don't think just putting it into administration is enough. Where crime has been committed, charges should be laid. The government has to reinstate the ABCC to control bad behaviour and crime on building sites and things like extortion. And we have to do something about government's propensity to look the other way. It's just plain impossible, as I think I mentioned yesterday, that The Age and 60 Minutes not only knew, but were able to gather information, evidence and witnesses to all of this. The government has far greater investigative powers and resources if it wanted to use them. I find it impossible that the government didn't know. And what about all those independent commissions against corruption? Every state has one. How does Labour have any independence or integrity or credibility when it comes to controlling lawless trade unions? And it's not only the building industry, of course, it's the waterfront as well, probably others. Unions were set up originally. They were set up as a response to the abuse of power and exploitation of the employer class, not a replacement for it. Bullying is bullying. I don't care. Doesn't matter who does it. It's there to be called out and stamped out wherever we see it or whoever perpetrates it. Now, what to do about all of this? What to do about it? Because a whole lot of good union people and union members are going to get a bad name. It just looks so bad, smells. What to do? Well, firstly, placing the Victorian branch in administration will do nothing. Don't force people to join a union. It should be so attractive that people want to do it anyway. Do away with compulsory unionism. Stop political donations from the trade unions. And I think Peter Malinauskas is in favour of that, but it hasn't been explained to me how it would work. You must separate the Labour Party and or Labour governments from the union movement in what you might call a separation of powers. A firewall of some kind. Understand that when you draw your candidates or your talent from this very source, it is a constant continuation of union contamination, all the way to the top. And now, thanks to Paul Keating and his industry super funds, the unions have billions and billions of dollars as well as power. After looking at the 60 Minutes story on Sunday night, the whole thing really stinks. From the government links to the taxpayer-funded Aboriginal hire companies, it's obviously a huge problem. I told you the other day about the union standover tactics, that when I worked for 5KA, and their demand was that if the station didn't sack me because they didn't like what I said, they would stop work on the radio station's new building. bullying, thuggery. Not the workers, no, the union guys who have probably never picked up a tool in their lives. And take down those traitorous flags that fly from every construction site and crane in Australia. Put the Australian flag there proudly. And Peter Malinowskis maybe should think about giving back that six-figure donation that reputedly came from the CFMEU before the last election, or convince me that there weren't any strings attached to it. Nick McKenzie from The Age and 60 Minutes, I hope to have him on the program on Friday. JeremyCordeaux.com, around the dining room table, live streaming. He's a young man with a lot of talent and courage too, and courage. Now, I am very proud, as you can imagine, I'm very proud of my Walkley Award. This young Nick McKenzie has 14 Walkley Awards. Golly. And something else. When you see the cost overruns on construction sites, particularly things like the Victorian big build, massive infrastructure, 2, 3, 4, 5 times the original cost estimates. How much of that is the fault of the CFMEU? Condoned, of course, by the Labor government. Things like the lollipop people, you know, the stop-go people who are paid $216,000 a year to stand there and turn the sign from one side to the other. Stop, go. But let's be perfectly honest. The Labour Party was established more than 100 years ago to represent the trade union movement in state and federal parliaments. Like I say, they own the Labour Party. It's a problematic situation. How much time have I got, Pete?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Anne Vanstone has resigned as the ICAC Commissioner here in South Australia. She was the second. The first leader was, in fact, Bruce Lander. He was first appointed in 2020. Bruce Lander was a good man. Anne Vanstone is a good woman. And she quit in disgust. She says that the Attorney General here in South Australia is asleep at the wheel. Well, I'm not in a position to know whether that's right or wrong. I don't know. But gee, I'd like to talk to her. I will try and get her on the show coming up. And one more quickly, 49 people charged in South Australia with child sex abuse. These are government officials. Do you believe that? Why hasn't that been exposed? I think the minister has a lot of questions to answer. I personally think she should be sacked. Now we don't have an Anne Vanstone anymore. I guess it's open slather. The minister, Anne Hildyard, I think her name is, before entering Parliament, she was a cleaner. Nothing wrong with that. It's a good, honourable thing to do. A cleaner and a trade union leader. Now the Minister for Child Protection. Not doing a very good job of protecting our children, Minister. I'm sorry. I think that's absolutely disgraceful. Really. Let me do a couple of dates and remind you about the lovely rising sun. If you're looking for a intimate dinner for two, they're open basically every day of the week. Not always lunch and dinner. It's a combination of the two. Open fires at this time of the year. It is a beautiful venue. Heritage listed, built back in 1845. Great kitchen, wonderful wine cellar. Have a talk to Grant. They're on Bridge Street at Kensington, very close to the city. If you're coming to Adelaide for any reason, try to pick a little bit of time to enjoy the Rising Sun Inn, named as the best inn or pub in South Australia. Great accolade. Congratulations, Grant. Now, the date is the 17th of July. Matthew Flinders publishes A Voyage to Terra Australis, detailing his circumnavigation of Australia. First to name, in fact, the continent Australia. He dies one day later. 1814 was the year. Modoc the elephant dies at 78. The oldest known non-human mammal dies on this day in 1975. Royal proclamation by King George V changes the name of the British royal family from German Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor. I mean, that's not only a double-barreled name, it's a triple-barreled name. And I suppose 1917 being the year, it wouldn't have been the best time to have a triple-barreled German name. Tricky if you are the sovereign. Construction of Disneyland commences at Anaheim in California in 1954. Camilla Parker Bowles, British wife of King Charles III and Queen of the United Kingdom, was born in London, England on this day in 1947. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Elmer Fudd, originally called Egghead, Warner Brothers cartoon character created by Tex Avery and Chuck Jones, Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies series, first to booze as Egghead on this day in 1937. And I guess it was Mel Blanc who was doing Elmer Fudd. He did all the voices. Pete, you remember the one we were talking about? I think it was Mel Blanc's birthday, and I couldn't think of my favourite.
Foghorn Leghorn.
It was Foghorn Leghorn. A very bright boy, sharp as a bowling ball. Phyllis Diller, I loved her. American comedian, actress, 1917, born in Ohio on this day. Catherine Graham, another one of my favourite people, and I had the pleasure of talking to her during the Watergate scandal, because Catherine Graham was the lady who was, well, she'd never been in a newspaper office. Her husband was the publisher of the Washington Post, and he killed himself. And she had no option but to take over. And she did it brilliantly. She did it absolutely brilliantly, because right there on her desk at that incredibly difficult time landed the whole Watergate scandal, and all the pressure from the White House to tell her to back off or else. And she didn't. And Bernstein and Woodward didn't. She led the paper as it reported on the Watergate scandal. She dies after a fall. She was 84 years old. She dies on this day in 2001. David Hasselhoff, the American actor, born in 1952. Am I running out of time? James Cagney was born, New York, 1899. Did he say, "You dirty rat"? None of these people who are famous for certain things ever said the things that they're famous for. Dear, oh dear. And Donald Sutherland, recently gone to God, Canadian actor, The Dirty Dozen, The Eagle Has Landed, MASH, The Hunger Games. He was born in New Brunswick, died 2024. He was born this day in 1935. And a dear man, Walter Cronkite, also American broadcaster and news anchor, CBS News, from 62 to 81. That was quite a reign. I mean, Walter Cronkite, when he told you the news, he didn't read you the news, he told you the news, and you believed every word of it, because that man would not lie. And you knew he wouldn't lie. That's what news is about. Television news, radio news, it's just that trusted. You can't fake that. You can't synthesize it, you can't buy it, you can't steal it. Well, I suppose you can. But I think he was with the CBS network for all his career. 2009. He dies at the age of 92. Thank you so much for being with us, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to your company on Friday if you're good enough to join us. JeremyCordeaux.com at the dining room table. Lots of things to talk about, interesting guests. Peter Clayton behind the camera. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. We'll be back with our posting on Facebook and podcasting next week. Believe in yourself, and thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion.